Good morning everybody, and a very warm welcome to Mildenhall and Districts, and my name is Susanna and I live with trains. And today we shall be looking at my new class Dapol 73. Just before we go there, I just wanted to touch upon a comment made by a YouTuber subscriber on my previous video about my Digitrack system. So on my next video we'll be taking a closer look at that. So without further ado, we're going to be looking at and talking about the Class 73. Now the Class 73 for me has always been quite a favourite of mine. It goes up there with my Class 50s, which is my favourite, and the HSTs. Those are the two but the 73 has always been up there as well. It's basically the Class 73, I've ridden a lot behind the Class 73. I used to run up and down there on the Gatwick Express a lot, and that is where I mainly rode on the Class 73 when I used to go up to Gatwick, because I used to have, and I still do, enjoy plane spotting, as well as train spotting and all the rest of it. So I used to ride and combine the two together, because back in the day, the Gatwick Express was hauled by a Class 73. So I always used to take a ride on the Class 73, and I always used to love riding behind them because I used to love the sounds of them. I have 5 73s on the layout, and we'll have a quick look at each of them before we get into the main crux of the video. So if the Class 73 is your bag, then this is the video for you, and let's spin you around and actually get on and show you some of the Class 73s that I have. So this is my first Class 73 to show you. This is a Lima Class 73, and I have to say, considering how old the tooling is, it's still in very good shape, and there's not a mark on it, and it's in a Pullman livery, and this one has got coastal DCC sound on it. So a little bit later on in the video we'll do a little comparison between the two chips that I have, because my new Class 73, I'm going to be putting a Legoman Biffo sound chip into that, and then we can have a quick look at both of them. So this is my Lima Class 73 that I have in the Pullman livery, and it runs very well. And I think the Class 73 by Lima still stands up well, so much so that actually the GBRF ones that I'm going to show you, these Hornby Railroad ones, are basically based on the Lima Class 73. So the next 73 to talk to you about is this Network Rail Class 73. Now this is also an elderly Lima Class 73, DCC converted, as was the Pullman. And this one's actually been repainted and renumbered as 73212. And this loco actually existed in real life, and I've weathered it and toned it down. And that hasn't got any sound in it at all, but that looks really, really nice. Now this Class 73 is in the GB Rail Freight livery. This is what you call the Hornby Railroad version, and it's been weathered and renumbered, and it's got its proper nameplates on it, because I bought 2 of these at the same time. They were both the same numbers, and I just wanted to change the number, because basically when Hornby released this, they released this as a 73.9, but the front, the nose, looked exactly the same as a 73.1 and a 73.2, so they didn't bother changing the nose to reflect the fact that they put it as a 73.9. I think Hornby would have just been better off when they released it, just releasing it as a 73.1 or 2, because then the nose would have been accurate. So nonetheless, I ended up renumbering this, weathering this, and I've actually put lighting in this as well. It's actually got lighting in the head code box on that one. So this one's had a bit, and also this is basically from the family of the Lima, but it has got a DCC socket and it has got the improved motor in it. So this one, number 4, is the basically is the one that Hornby released originally, which was 73964. However, like I said, the nose was exactly the same as the nose on 73141, so that was inaccurate. And nobody have I seen actually bothered trying to recreate the 739 as yet. So maybe in the future, maybe one of the maybe Dapol or Acura Scale will eventually come out with an official 739. This 739 is one that I did myself, that I redid the nose and tried to reflect more of what a 739 looks like. It doesn't have working lights or anything, but basically the essentials are there, the jumper cables and the way the lighting is on the front, and also the little marker light on the top, little high intensity light on the top. So, and also I blacked out the headco boxes as per the real thing. And like I said, that is basically a Lima, but has been converted, but Hornby put an 8-pin socket in it and they did change the motor in it, but essentially it's still the same Lima tooling. So here is the subject of today's video, and that is my new Dapol Class 73. This is 73235, and it's in the Southwest Trains livery. And I do love this livery because it's like a very striking livery, and it works really well in contrast with the background and where it's sitting at the moment. I've done some research on this particular locomotive, and it has actually been to Alton. So I'm really pleased that it has been here. And this actual one's been to Alton. Now, I didn't realise that Southwest Trains actually had two of these. This one being 73235, and they also had 73201 Broadlands. Broadlands is now with GB Rail Freight. I think 73235 might also be with GB Rail Freight. It might actually have been renumbered. I'm not entirely certain about 235, but many of these still exist. And the fabulous thing about the Class 73 is that when you put a sound chip in it, it's an electro diesel. So you almost get two sound chips for the price of one, because you get the diesel side and you also get the electric side. So it's almost like great value for money in terms of a sound chip, because you are getting electric and diesel sounds. So that's really, really great. Excuse me. Now, I did have a look on YouTube for footage of this. Now, from what I can gather, there isn't a huge amount of footage of this 73 on YouTube, but from what I have seen of it, it has actually done a lot of rail tours and things like that. So it's pulled green coaches and stuff, which is what I've got, so I can run it with that. I might stick it on some engineers' trains because I'm sure it's done that. But one of the images that I found, which I found was the money shot, was that I found an image of it on Flickr, where this was pulling a VEP, a full car VEP, and Hornby are due to release this in the summer, which I have on pre-order, and so it can run with this, because what they used to do with some of these 73s is that they used to run them as they used to basically use them on the back of some of the electric units, where they used to go to places where they hadn't been electrified, so they can use the power of the 73 as a diesel to run on the non-electrified sections of the track. And so that's why they used to couple them sometimes with the full car electric units, like the VEPs and the SEPs and I think the SIGs and things like that, which they're all pretty much the same, similar looking. If I can find you an image, I'll stick an image on the corner just so you have a rough idea of what I'm talking about. And I did find an image of it at Waterloo, which again I'll show you if I can. And basically the caption was that it was on a Waterloo to Alton service. So was basically hauling a 4-car electric unit up to Alton, and it had the head code on it, and when I checked the head code on it, it was the head code for Alton. So this particular loco has actually been up here to Alton. So I'm really, really pleased with that. So now we're going to take it to the workbench, and we're going to have a look at the inside of it, and I'll sort of show you me putting the decoder in, and the reason for that will become clear when I talk to you about it. So you now find me back at my usual spot. I've now removed the body, and just as Danny from Ivor Junction had mentioned before, because he has got one of these, it is very easy to remove the body. It's just literally 4 screws, and you can see the sort of lugs there, you can see the sort of holes there. There's 1 there, 2, 3 and 4. So there's basically, it's very easy to remove, and the body did actually just slip off a tree. No problems with removing the body at all. Thankfully, because sometimes these manufacturers, they make it so awkward for you to get into their locomotives. Now, what I have for my Dapol 73 is this. Now, I wanted to show you this because this is a chip from Legoman Biffo, and usually with these chips you get a sugar cube speaker with it, but I actually spoke to him at great length. I don't think it's Legoman Biffo himself directly, but DC Kits, I think his name is Charlie. Anyway, now something to bear in mind if you do speak to him, and some of you already know this already for experience, is that he can be a little bit abrasive. When I first spoke to him, he did put me off a little bit, but once you move past that, he's generally okay, and he has actually given me some good information. And not only has he given me some good information, you know, he just explains it very well and what I can and can't do, so I can't fault him for that. So I was talking to him in depth because what happened is I actually, like my 59, I went to the YouTube website and he did a sound file video on the Class 73 by Dapol. So I went on to have a look at that and I watched it and I thought, oh, this sounds really, really good. Now I've got a Coastal DCC sound chip on my other 73, which I also love. The problem I have with that one is that, to me, the sound just seems too low. Now I'm still trying to sort that out. I don't know why, because it's at its highest volume, but it still sounds too low. If you put another loco alongside it with sound, it kind of drowns it out and you can't really hear it. So I might be changing the speakers out again and seeing what I could put in there to see if I can improve it. Now, I spoke to DC Kits and said to him, because I was going to get because I made up my mind I was going to get a Legoman Biffo chip. So I went onto his website and I looked through the options for the Dapol. And one of the things I didn't realise is that there was 3 different versions. There's 3 versions of the Dapol 73. And I didn't realise that. And he said on it, when you order your Legoman Biffo chip, that you need to put in the comments which version of the 73 you have. And I'm like, I don't know. So I phoned him up and spoke to him about it, and I said to him, look, what does all this mean? You know, I don't get it. What does it mean? You know, that, because I don't understand what version 1 is, version 2. And he explained to me that, because obviously I knew there was lighting issues with it, but when I originally bought my 73, I was at Behringer and I was using DC, not DCC. And there were some lighting issues with the 73, which I knew about. And then subsequently, they sort of revised it and I think they fixed it. And I think that's where the whole different versions were. But you had to know which version you had in order to get the right chip. So he said to me to look at the Hatton's website, which will tell you generally when they were released or produced. And then that will tell you, basically give you an idea of when it was, whether it's one of the later ones or one of the early ones. Now this South West Trains one is one of the early ones. So he said to me about getting the version 1 sound file. So that's what I got. So that was good. So that was good to talk to him about, because then he explained that to me and I knew. So basically this has got a version 1 Legoman Biffo sound chip for the Dapol 73 because it's one of the earlier 73s. So then I spoke to him about the speakers, and usually these come with sugar cube speakers, and I said to him, look, I've seen your video and apparently you've put an EM1 in it and it sounds awesome. And he said, yeah, I've put an EM1 in it and I've put a sugar cube speaker in it, but he said it doesn't, and I said, oh, that's great. And I said, so I could just pop that straight in? And he said, well, no, because I had to modify it in order to get it to fit. So basically what he was saying is that, if I just show you, all of these side trims here, all these bits that are sticking up that hold the speaker in place, had to be cut away. And then basically you can do, and then after you should be able to fit the EM1 speaker. Now looking at this, it doesn't look like a terribly difficult job, but I didn't realise that. And to be honest, I'm not one for messing around with trying to hack at chassis and things like that. I'm just really not keen on it. So what he suggested is that he put a bass reflex speaker, which isn't as good as the EM1, but it's still a really good speaker. So this is the speaker that he's put on it, this one here, and then this should then just fit on the locomotive, which by the looks of things, so if I just show you, take you down, you can see it should just clip in, and then that should just go in there. So we'll do that and see what happens. So as you can see, I've now fitted in the speaker and the chip. It comes with this on the top here, and basically to make my life a little bit easier, because it's a little bit awkward with the wiring, is that basically these 4 tabs, they're just little tabs, they're not glued or anything, and you can prise this off, and this makes life a lot easier to fit in the decoder. So that's what I've decided to do with that, because the wiring does get in the way. So here's the 73 on the track, and as you can see, the speaker sits in really nicely over there, and I haven't had to modify it at all, so it just clips in like that. Like I said, if I want to get the EM1 speaker, that probably would fit in. You'd have to trim all of this back, but I'm quite happy with how it is. The other thing to note is that where the clips are on here to put this shroud on, I think mine was put on the wrong way round, because one end is slightly longer than the other, and I think when it was put on, when I originally opened it, this cover was facing that way, which meant it was right on top of the decoder, which made it difficult for the wires to get through. So this is the way it's supposed to be, and it seems to sit all right on there. And I think the purpose of it is that when you put the body back on, that you can, because the body's see-through, and basically I think the purpose of that shroud is kind of to stop you from looking at the speaker inside and also the motor inside. So I think that's what the purpose is. You can leave this out, it's not going to make any difference, but I've managed to pop it back on, and it seems to sound okay. The CVs do need adjusting on it because it seems awfully slow. And the other chip that was in it, it was running fine, so I suspect that the CVs need knocking about with it, and you just need playing around with it to try and get it to run a bit better. But it does sound pretty good. So this is how it sounds with this speaker. And like I said, what I'll do is we'll put everything back on, and then I'm not going to screw the body on. So I want to check the lighting on it and the cab lighting, because it does say on the earlier models you can't turn off the cab lighting. So if you can't turn it off via the DCC, then maybe I can turn it off via the switches, which I'd rather do. So before I screw the body on, I just want to check the lighting on it. So it's just sort of, actually what I'll do now is I'll put the body on and then we can check it out. So as you can see in this view, you've got the head code box and the lighting on. And I've had to actually put a screw on each corner, because it's got these sync plungers kind of thing to make the connections. So if I don't put the screws on, the body will raise and then the lighting won't work. So I've had to secure it in order to test the lighting. So the head code boxes work and the intensity works, high intensity light works, and as you can see, it's facing in that direction. Now, what I do like about this on this Lego Man Biffo chip is if I change the direction, you'll see that the way the head code box just slowly dim out. But as you can see, the cab light's still on. So I'm going to have to just have a quick look at the paperwork, see which switches relate to the cab and turn them off, and hopefully that will just turn them off permanently. I'd rather they were turned off permanently, to be honest, because real train drivers aren't going to have just as we as bus drivers, we don't drive around with the cab lights on, so it's just going to have to be switched off. It's to do with, you can't really do anything about it unless you rewire it, but that's down to Dapol. So so like I said, I think on the later ones you can actually, they have actually sorted this out, which is why I think they ask you about the sound chip on it. So hello everyone and welcome back. Right, it's been about 3 days or so since my last clip to doing this clip, and the reason why I've got my glasses will become apparent because since my last clip that I showed you of the 73 working proper, and I said I was just going to have a look at the switches, well, that proved to be a bit of a faff, to be honest, because basically what's happened is the lighting went a bit doolally when I changed the switch. Now it's really bizarre because when I bought this locomotive, it was DCC fitted, and all the lighting was working as it should have done, but for some reason when I put the Lego Man Biffo chip in it, it wouldn't work, and wouldn't work properly. The sound worked, it moved, but the lighting went a bit. Now, as I showed you in the last clip, it all seemed to be working well initially, and then I did say at the end of the last clip that there was some cab lights on and I was going to switch them off. Now it does say on the Dapol sheet, if you've owned a 73, you'll know this sheet. It says here there's a switch there, and that is the switch for the cab lights. So it said that it says for switch number 2, it says position 1 is the leading cab light on, directionally controlled. Position 2, both cab lights off, and position 3, the trailing cab light on, directionally controlled. So me being me, I thought, right, the lights are working, it's facing in the right direction, it's working as it should. All I've got to do to switch the cab lights off is switch this switch here to the middle where it says position 2, where it says SW2, and switch it to position 2 where it says both cab lights off, and that will sort that out, and then it'll be fully working and it'll be fine. No. It's taken me 3 days to sort this out, and a lot of sort of like, almost like I wish I didn't bother getting the chip for it, and wishing that I didn't even buy it, and it was just like. So what it boils down to is, for some reason, when I flick the switch to the centre where it says both cab lights are off, it affected the way that the high intensity lights worked, and basically it reversed it. So the headlight would be pointed in that direction, but the loco went in this direction. Why? No idea. So I initially was like, well, it was working originally before, so maybe now I've set the switch to the centre, so both cab lights are off. Maybe if I CV8 the chip and reset it, and again I asked some advice on this to see whether I could reset the chip without losing any of the functions and sounds and everything, because I was paranoid that by resetting the chip I might possibly delete some of the sounds or something. So that wasn't the case, but I CV8'd it to 8. That made absolutely no difference. The other trick was to do CV29, where basically you could reverse the motor via the CV setting 29. And basically you'd read the CV to its current value, and in my case it was 0, so that was an even number, they called it. So I put it to an odd number, and that should reverse the running of the motor, which it did, but at the same time it still reversed the lights. So I still had the same problem, because now the lights were facing that way, but the loco wanted to go that way. So it left me with the unenviable option of basically to get the lights sorted, and it's not sorted 100% because for some reason I think the head code, and I think this is to do with the wiring that Dapol have done, but I'm not sure. Basically the headlights do work, it will come on, but as soon as you start moving it switches off automatically, and I'm not quite sure why that is doing that. Like I said, I've now got it to a point where the cab lights are off, and the headlight is facing that way, and the loco is also going that way. So that's where we're at. But in order to get there, I've had the unenviable task of having to desolder the motor wires and reversing the motor wires around to match the fact that the lighting is reversed. So in theory, they're both working in reverse. So the lights should now be matching the direction of the loco, which it now does. Hope you're still with me on this. Now to do this, I've had to look at the exploded diagram that Dapol have sent me. Well, not sent me, but came with a box, to see which was the best way of getting to the motor. And as you can see, there's the motor there. But in order to get to the motor, not only do you have to take the shell off, but there's also the PCB board, which is mounted to this plastic board here, which is what holds the cradle for the motor, which seems a big, massive faff to do. So the only other option to do it and get at the motor wires was to actually solder it to the PCB board, and basically take the solder line to the PCB board, basically desoldering the motor plus and the motor minus, and basically reverse the wires so then it matches the lighting, which is in reverse, and that should cure the lighting. And it has, to a degree. I still haven't quite worked out with the cab lighting what the issue is, whether or not it might be a CV or a function setting, so I've got to play around with that. But I'm just happy and relieved that we're now getting to a point where the loco is now usable. So let me show you the locomotive as it is, and I'm just going to drop you down. There is said locomotive. So I'll just take the body off because it isn't screwed in, because I didn't want to keep screwing it. This is the problem I've had with this body shell. As you can see, with the body shell, you've got to keep screwing it into these plastic, and I'm just paranoid about breaking the threads, and then therefore I can't screw the body down, which means then the plungers, which you can see on here, that go into, well, those are the contacts at the top. The plungers are actually on the board here, and these need to make contact with the body shell. But obviously, if you break the threads, the body won't sit loose. The body will sit loose, and it won't make correct contact. So right, so here's the Legoman Biffo sound chip. This is the speaker that it was recommended to me, which I'm perfectly happy with. It's not as good as the EM1 speaker, I'll be honest, but to be truthful with you, I'm happy the fact that it sits here nicely and you get a good sound out of it. So, you know, it's not brilliant, amazing sound, but it's good sound and I'm happy with it. Now, again, you have to remove the shroud, which you've got here, and that's just basically just popping that off. Now if I just, sorry, I'll go use a little screwdriver for this. It isn't glued or anything. Well, mine wasn't anyway. So if I just put that out of the way somewhere. I've taken this out a few times now, but basically that's the motors underneath there. And the motor plus, and it's in the diagram, but I did take my phone to examine this PCB board quite carefully. But in the center of this PCB board here, on this side, you'll see that there's two wires, one red, one black. Basically, it says M plus and M minus. And what I had to do was basically carefully desolder it and basically do a switcheroo. So the black wire went where the red wire was, and the red wire goes where the black wire was. And then that goes back into there and pops back in like so. And now I should hopefully be able to screw this body back once and for all, and at least at the bare minimum have the high intensity light working. And then with a bit of luck I might be able to get, because here are the switches here. This is the switch for the cab light. Let me just show you that as well. So up the top here, there's a little switch here. That's the switch for the cab lights, and that's in the center position, which is lights off. You then get two switches here, another one at the top there, another two here at the top, two at the bottom, and they are for your high intensity lights and for your head code boards at either end. And again, if you've got one of these, it will explain it on the paperwork. Now, when I spoke to Legoman Biffo about buying which version of the chip, he said to me that I should get version 1, which he said that's what he thinks this is. Paul at my local model shop tends to think that this isn't version 1. He reckons it is version 2 on the of the Dapol series, and I tend to agree with him. And I think if I had the version 2, this might be working correctly without too much issues like I've had with the lighting. But that's debatable because I don't have it. I've got the version 1 chip. It is working to a degree, and the high intensity light is now working in the direction it should. But I couldn't really recommend saying to you, if you are interested in a sound chip and you were interested in getting a Legoman one, whether or not you should get the version 1 or version 2 or version, I think there's 3 versions. Again, you'd really have to phone him to find out, but I don't think for the version 1 is that great. I don't think it's the right one, to be honest. I can't be certain, but I don't think it is. The other thing is when I bought the chip off of Legoman Biffo, I think, I'll be honest, his customer service isn't that great. And I think it was Charlie from DC Kits. He's, like I said before, he's a bit abrasive. And when I called him up to query some of this information about this chip, now he sold it to me, it's almost like, I explained it to him. I said, oh, look, I bought this chip from you a few days ago. And he said, no, I don't remember. No, I've sold so many since then, and they've all gone. I can't possibly remember. So he was a bit kind of like that. So I think there's a lesson to be learned here with Legoman Biffo chips and DC Kits, and that is, if I'm sure that the chip is going to work as it should and there isn't any known issues with the actual locomotive itself to begin with, then I can buy a chip from him. But in this case, I think I was wrong to probably buy the chip from him. And that's because I've had this issue with it, and he hasn't really been that forthcoming on a resolution or a solution to try and get this to work as it should. He hasn't said to me, oh look, just send it back and I'll get it sorted out, or I'll get a version 2 programmed or anything like that. I've pretty much been left to my own devices, which is what's created this whole dilemma, because I didn't particularly want to take the soldering iron to the PCB board, because the loco was actually working, and I didn't want to do anything that might then compromise that, and then I wouldn't have a working sound chip or a working loco. But that's where I was left with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the body back on, we'll take it on the track and I'll show you, and we'll give it a whiz around with the sound. And then I want to show you my other Class 73 with the coastal DCC sound, and then give you my final thoughts on if I was to buy another sound chip, which one I would go for. So let me put this back together again and then we'll get it on the track. So here is my Class 73 on the track. And let me just get the lights on for you. So as you can see, the high intensity light has come on. And you can see it's running in the right direction. Now you can also have it on function 19 that it comes on with the head code box. But look what happens as soon as I turn it, as soon as it starts going, it switches off. Stop, it comes back on. So although I'm not quite sure why it's doing that, I'm just happy that it's working. Now I'll be honest, I think that sounds pretty good, considering it's not an EM1 speaker. And I think it kind of suits this particular locomotive. And the other thing is, because it sits so well in the cradle and it's clipped in and firmly secured, you're not getting any vibration from the speaker because it isn't secured properly and it's not knocking against anything. So at least that's well thought out. So let's try going the other way. So that's diesel. The horns are independent and they do sound like the Class 73. There's also other functions, so let me just go through those. So just checking on my iPad, because Lego Man Biffo don't actually send you any paperwork. This is the other thing. He doesn't send you any paperwork. You've got to download it or get it off his website. So that's F4, which is buffer clash. F5, which is the brake application. F6, which is the door slam. F7, which is the compressor, which is one of my favourites. Because it was always a distinct sound that I used to hear on the 73. And then you've got the electric drive. So if I just shut down the diesel, and this is what I like the sound chips for the Class 73, because it's like you get two sound chips in one. So if you do that and you press F8 for the electric, when it starts, it should just, yes, let's have it set, have the camera set up. So we send it back the other way. I do like that. And then you've got F9, which is, you can have automatic flange squeal. And I think that is only when it's doing its thing, it's moving. F10 is the guard's whistle. So let me give you an F10 guard whistle. There you go. Number 11 isn't used. Number 12 is the roof fan. And then on the 13, you've got the sanders. Now F14 is the exhauster. It says it comes on at slow speed, and I think it's like an automatic thing. And then it seems like F15, 16 and 17 are all omitted. And then you've got F18 for the detonators, which again is, I guess, when it's when you're basically running. F19 is the cab lights. Now again, it seems to be, it says cab lights, but it's actually illuminating the headboards, the head code boards. So I think, I don't know if it's to do with the wiring, because it does seem like the wiring, but I could be wrong. But that's F19, as you can see, that's the cab light, that's the head code boxes, not the cab lights. But I did try all three positions of the cab light switches to see if I could get this to work. So this for me is the best option at the moment. And then you got F20, which is also for the blinds, but again it says for the 20. It says for the 20. Please note, for the 2019 version, the head codes on the front are right, and so again, I'm not sure if version 1 is the right version of this sound chip, if I'm being honest. So if I just put this more into the camera. I do like it. Right. So here is the Class 73 on. You can see it's £116.50. That's before you add the options. But if you look at it, it says when ordering. You can see that. Please note there's version 1, 2 and 3. So you have to know which one you've got, which I found it impossible. And I had to speak to him about that. And like I said, I don't think version 1 is the right version, to be truthful with you. So now let's look at the Coastal DCC one. So here is my other 73 with sound. This is the Pullman version, and this has got Coastal DCC sounds, which I really like because you get this. This comes with you get the paperwork that comes with it. So if I just let me just pull you right out on that. You get all the paperwork that comes with it, and it even tells you some driving notes, which basically gives you the best way to drive it. And I do like this chip. Now, I've checked it out, and if you go, there we go. If I just pull you out a bit on this. This is his website, Class 73, and £95 for a decoder. Don't know if you can see it on there. That's clear enough. £95 for the 21 pin, but that I don't think that includes the speaker. You will get a Sugar Cube speaker as standard, but this one hasn't got one. This has got a different speaker, and I can't remember what speaker it's got in it, to be honest. But it's not the loudest, and that's why I'm thinking of swapping it out, because I think this one would benefit from like an EM1 speaker. And if I just get that switched on, in fact we'll do the same test again. I'm just going to just pop you up so you can see. So here we go. So F0 is for lights, but there's no lighting on this because this is an old Lima. But this has got 16 functions. But if you bear in mind, this has got less functions than the Legoman Biffo. But there's a couple of functions on the Legoman Biffo that isn't actually being used. So you could argue that this is better value for money. So let's just diesel start. Now you can say on this that it doesn't sound quite as good, but that's more to do with the speaker than it is to do with the sound file. So bear that in mind. So now we've got the horns. Now on these horns, on this one, it does sound like the 73. However, they're not independent like the ones on the Legoman Biffo chip. But I quite like that because it makes life easier. So F2 is high-low. F3 is low-high. And then you've got F4, which is the brake release. F5 is the flange squeal, which again you get that when it's moving. F6 is the door slam. F7 is the electric, which will fire up now. And we'll shut down the diesel. So it's now in electric mode, which I really do like. Oh, the other way. Bring it back. Bring it back. Sing it back. Right, here it comes. Now I like that, to be honest. I do like the electric on that. And then you've got F7, you've got F8, which is the volume, which you just switch on and off. F9 is the inertia, which is another cool feature on this. You don't get the inertia feature on the Legoman Biffo. So what I'll do is I'll send it back the other way, and I'll demonstrate the inertia. Now, what happens is when you use the inertia button, or if you don't use it, basically at the moment it's not on. And what that does is basically when the loco comes to a stop, it will come to a stop naturally. So let me just demonstrate that. So the loco's coming towards me. I'll shut the power off now. And that's sort of where it stops. Now, if I press, I'm going to send it back the other way, back to where it was. Now I'll send it back towards me, and this time, at the same point, I'll press the inertia button. And it virtually stops. It's not so pronounced on. It's more. You can see it more on the Dapol, because they've got flywheels, whereas this one hasn't got any flywheels on it. And basically, what you're doing is, when you shut the power down on the locomotive, you just let inertia sort of take its course, and it will eventually come to a stop. But the thing is, with the F9 button, if you say you're approaching a platform with the buffers at the end, and you think to yourself, I don't think this train's going to stop on time, you basically press the F9 button, and it almost acts like a DC controller, where you shut the voltage down. As soon as you shut the voltage down, it just stops dead. So that's basically the best way to describe the inertia feature. It's difficult to demonstrate on the Lima ones, because they don't have flywheels, so they just tend to stop quite immediate anyway. F10 is the compressor. So let's just get this. Let me show you the compressor function. There you go. Now I do like the compressor on this one. Now on this one, the compressor is like timed out. So if I press it again, if you just look at my controller, it says 10 on it. You see that the compressor's gone out even though the F10 is still depressed. So, but on the Legoman Biffo one, it's basically the compressor will stay on until you decide to switch it off. So you've got to physically switch the button off. You've also got the arc rail. So that's when it's arcing. And basically 11 is the Spirex valve. So if I just I've just shut the electric down. So that's the Spirex valve. F13 is the buffering up. I don't know whether or not you can do that without the sound. So that's the, and then you've got the cab lights on F15 and F16. But again, this is on a Lima, so it won't have any cab lighting of any description at all, unless I decide to fit that in. And this is on an 8-pin chip, I should say. It's not on a 21-pin, because I had to hardwire all this one together to get this one to have sound to work on it. So in conclusion, which sound file would I recommend if I was to get another one? Well, they both have their pros and cons, but I think I have to say that if I was to get another sound chip, based on the two that I already have, I would go and get the one from Coastal DCC. Now, it's not the loudest in the world, but I will be probably getting an EM1 speaker for that, or maybe getting a bass reflex speaker, which is the same as what's in this one. But basically, I think an EM1 speaker would fit in quite easily in this one. So it might be very well be in, but the bass reflex speaker that's in this one, in the Legoman Biffo chip, sounds awfully good as well. But I would say that I would go with Coastal DCC. Now, because I had bought the Legoman Biffo chip for my Class 59 and that sounded awesome, it was one of the reasons why it swayed me to go towards getting a sound chip for this 73. But it just goes to show you that all is not equal. And I think why I'd say to go with Coastal is, like I said, I showed you on the iPad, you still sell the chips at like £95. The Legoman Biffo one cost me just under 130 for that. So, and when I bought this was about that sort of money. It was about £90, £95. So he hasn't actually put the prices up. But obviously you need to speak to him to double check that that is still the case. But that's not adding the speaker. So obviously, you know, if you paid £95, it will come with the standard Sugar Cube speaker. If you decide that you want to put a bass reflex speaker or something more, then obviously depending on the speaker, you'll have to add that to factor that into the cost of the decoder. But what I would say is the reason, I tell you why I'd go to Coastal DCC. I actually preferred the sounds. No, it's not only the price, which is a lot cheaper. Also, according to Coastal DCC, there isn't free versions of the Dapol. So he's just got one decoder for the sound files for the Dapol 73. So that tells me that you don't have to bother working out whether you've got the version 1, version 2, version 3, which one's got which, and it's all the rest of it. It's good value for money, in my view, because it's £95 according to his current website, but like I said, that's speaker dependent. And you get a good range of sounds. Some are automatic. I actually prefer the electric sounds over the Legoman Biffo ones, I'll be honest. So I really do like that. Also, you'll get a sheet from Coastal DCC and like this, and so you don't have to download. I mean, Lego Man Biffa doesn't provide you with any info. You have to go to his website and screenshot it or download it or whatever. Whereas Coastal will give you, Kevin over at Coastal DC will give you this, and he'll also give you the driving notes. There's driving notes on how to drive it, and that's how I sort of learned how to drive it. And it's actually quite fun to sort of try and get the best out of the locomotive, so you're not left on your own to figure it out. It says, oh, you should do this, so you try it. Also, Kevin is such a nice guy. He has helped me so many times, and this wasn't even related to his own products. He's helped me with other products, including this Dapol, including this Dapol 73. So I asked him for his advice on that, even though it wasn't his chip in the locomotive. So he's really, really helpful. So I found that Charlie from Lego Man Biffo is a bit abrasive, and it seems to me, like I said, a lesson learned on my part, which is why I'm telling you, that if you're not sure about something, then you're probably better off not getting a Lego Man Biffo chip, because it comes across to me that it was almost like he just wants to sell it to you. Once you've got it and it's in your locomotive, the aftercare is really not there. So, and I did have some issues with one of my Coastal chips, which I didn't understand. It wasn't because there was anything wrong, I just didn't understand it. And I spoke to Kevin about it. I gave him a phone call. He answered the phone, and he was more than helpful towards me, and in order to resolve any kind of issues that I might have had. So he's very forthcoming in being helpful. So that is a really big thing, because you're spending a lot of money on these chips, and I almost felt kind of a bit alone with this chip, to be honest, from Lego Man Biffa, because once he sold it to me, it's almost like it's your problem now if it doesn't work. And I suspect if I wanted to return this, I don't think he'd want to give me a refund either. So I don't know. So, but I didn't get that impression that he was particularly forthcoming in sort of saying to me, oh, look, if you've got a problem with it, send it back and we can give you a refund, or I can re-blow it or whatever and put the version 2 on it and see if that will help. But he didn't really give me any kind of information. So I was pretty much left on my own between myself and the few contacts that I have. And thankfully, like I said, Paul from my local model shop and Kevin over at Coastal DCC helped me in order to get to where I needed to go, in order to get the lights to work in the direction. Although the head code box for some reason still isn't, but I actually think that's to do with the wiring of the 73 as opposed to the decoder, because it seems to be linked in with the function seems to be linked in with the cab lighting. So I don't know why it's doing that, but I'm just happy enough that I've got the high intensity light and it actually works in the way it should now. It's just a bit of a shame that A, Dapol didn't get it right in the first place, and then B, the sound chip that I put in it, the person who supplied it to me, wasn't particularly the most helpful. So that concludes the end of this video, and I really apologise if it's going to be a long video, but I'm hoping it's going to be of help to somebody and of interest to somebody. And if anyone has got these issues with their Dapol 73, or is possibly thinking about getting a sound chip for their Dapol 73s, bear in mind that just to ask a few questions. If you buy a sound chip, just sort of explain to them, look, I think I might have lighting issues, is it going to be a problem? And see who can help you with that. By all means, if you want to contact me in the messages, please feel free to message me and contact me. And then if I need to, I can do a follow-up video to this video and try and get some answers for some of these comments that you put in. So until the next time, it's goodbye from Mildenhall and Districts. And a quick word on Graham over at Lakeside before we go, because I am so pleased that I've been able to point him in the right direction in order to see his locomotives back on the layout where they should be and ought to belong. And thank you to him is also because I've now received a number of subscribers, which I've had a little bit of a spike.
So I'm, assuming that some of the subscribers may have come over from viewing that video and come over from seeing his video and taken an interest in mine. So thank you so much to all those new subscribers who've turned up, and all my current subscribers that I currently have. It's nice to have you all on board, and I'm very, very happy to see Graham with a smile on his face having his 2 locomotives running on the layout as they should be. So to Graham, I'm glad to be of help, and it's nice to see a smile on your face. So until the next time, it's goodbye from Mildenhall and Districts. Goodbye.